flag of the United States of America, and the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please note, in case of an emergency, there are evacuation exits at the rear and at the front on the sides. Any correspondence that can be posted has been posted. Mr. Gavin, are there any students that would like to come up and address the board at this time? Okay, Mr. Gavin, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam President. First and foremost, from everyone here in the Rockville Center Public Schools, we wish everyone a happy new year. We've had a very exciting kickoff to the start of the year. I myself had an opportunity to go to one of the TOK classes today and talk about the theory of knowledge as it relates to artificial intelligence with some of our super bright, super insightful seniors. It was a great conversation. I'm going back again. One of the things we were able to do was have ChatGPT, which I don't know if you know what that is, but it's an AI agent. We asked ChatGPT to write a song about Plato's cave like Taylor Swift would do it. And it did. I was really happy that the kids knew what Plato's cave was, and I was really happy that they understood Taylor Swift way better than I do. So that was a lot of fun today. They promised they were going to sing that song for me the next time I come back. So I'm really looking forward to that, and it was a great time. And I really, want to thank Mr. Vinnie Valvoline for having me in and having the courage to have the superintendent sit there in the middle of your class and talk about the future with them. And it was a lot of fun. And every time I go and I have an opportunity to sit with our students, I know that our world is in good hands. We have some really, really impressive kids. Some other news items, I'd ask Ms. Love to talk a little bit about the upcoming wellness walk.
Yes. So it's been a collaborative effort with our mental health consortium, which includes staff members, parents, members of our PTA and board, as well as additional work that we've done with our PTA groups that represent their wellness committee. And together we are throwing an event. It's going to be the Wellness Walk and Fair. It will be held on May 13th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Southside Middle School Track and Field. We ask you to join us in celebrating and learning about various areas of wellness. All are welcome, and some of the activities will include interactive booths, giveaways, celebratory color run. So if you come, please wear white for the color run, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you, Ms. Love. I also will ask Mr. Murphy to come up and give us a little bit of an update on some of the security upgrades that we have gone through and some of the preparedness drills that we are either have done or are in the process of doing. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Gavin. So when we last spoke about security, we had mentioned the RAVE app, which was going to be updated and modernized. So as of the end of November, every school had been visited by both Homeland Security and the Rockville Center Police Department. Special thanks to Detective Bellows and Homeland Security Officer O'Neill, who not only went and made sure that the RAVE app was up and running and that the personnel that are on the list knew how to work it, they also conducted walkthroughs. One of the themes throughout this very short, concise overview is a special thank you to the Rockville Center and the 1st Precinct, who have really upped their game this year and made their presence both as an asset and as a presence much more than previous, which was already significant. So the police departments have been conducting formal and informal walkthroughs that started with the RAVE app application, sometimes outside just to make a presence known at the start of the day, and sometimes just to walk in. That has been increased by principals inviting them in when we do various drills, just to be a fly on the wall, watch us do a lockdown, and then provide feedback. The walkthroughs have been informational a lot because when we're going through these protocols, and we had questions even the last time, there's a lot of conventional wisdom that changes from day to day. Something as simple as locking a door can be subject to different interpretations, and the police department have been great sounding boards as well as verifications for that information. I've been working with Sergeant Pellegrino at the Rockville Center Police Department to plan down the road a late spring major event for our worst case scenario drill training, active shooter, as well as something that's called Stop the Bleed training, which we coordinate with Northwell Health. That'll come late in the spring. We've done it before, both at the middle school and the high school. We've learned a lot, both in terms of how to conduct something like that, both in terms of the emotional outpouring that it can create, as well as the questions to ask. So we're looking forward to that. Special thanks to them. There are other subtleties that we're looking at in terms of the normal day-to-day security issues, but then there's the other things that we could be doing that might just be better for the community and for us. For instance, it's a New York State high school graduation requirement that all students receive CPR training. They're not certified, but they receive training for that vital 90 seconds to 2 minutes in the event as a first responder. How to do compressions, what happens if it's a baby. So we have all our physical education staff that are trained doing it for students. The question was extended, especially by Dr. Walsh, well, why can't we do that with the staff? So we're starting to pilot that type of training for staff, not as a part of a drill, but just part of a mandated, regular day-to-day security effort to instill a little bit more confidence and to make people feel that we're doing everything possible to make sure that everybody's safe. So the physical training and the drills are in place. We're more than halfway through our drills, a variety of them, both the traditional fire drill, lockdown, lockout, shelter in place. And again, the worst case scenario during the second semester, those drills will take on a slightly different feel in different schools depending on the age of the children. For instance, doing drills at atypical times. You know, traditionally the fire drill is at a certain time in the middle of the period, right? What happens if it's in between periods? What happens if it's during recess? So subtly, it's almost like the slow release method to try to introduce different methodologies. Not that you're ever going to cover all eventualities, but you can look for the holes in the system and learn from each of them, both in terms of response time and who did listen and who didn't. As well as that, then there are the actual physical plant changes. So over the first 5 months, 100 of our older cameras have been swapped out for higher resolution versions. They are all in place now, including some new cameras that principals asked at strategic areas, both outside and inside. The vendor also went around and changed the directions of some of the cameras to make sure that they're fully
Refocused.
Thank you. That's a good word. They're refocusing the cameras. A+ is actually going through this week, building by building, to make sure that the principals are happy with that. There are other subtle instances for things that might be coming in the future, such as video intercom systems and delivery docks. The high school and the middle school are both exploring that, as well as new outside cameras. As you could tell, the new security booths are installed, up and running with electricity at the high school. Like I said, we're halfway through the drills. And there's things outside of the physical plant that have increased the safety. For instance, as we know, the Rockville Center Police have a computer system that has access to our camera system in the event of a severe emergency. With their relocation, that operating system has been renovated and updated to be much quicker and more secure. Today was the day that the 6th, is today the 6th, was the day that the installation was supposed to be complete and up and running. So we're up and well, and it's an evolutionary process. The thing about security training is that you can't say we have everything now, because the system changes and we have to learn to be flexible.
And the system not only changes, the guidance changes sometimes too. So what they recommend tactically in different situations changes from time to time as the police learn things. And one thing I can, first of all, thank you. Mr. Murphy's done a great job making sure that we are dotting our I's and crossing our T's where it comes to safety precautions. But I know that the police commissioner of Nassau County has been a great partner of school districts. He takes it very personally, and he goes above and beyond to try to make sure that superintendents and assistant superintendents are all in the know about what the latest tactics are. And they've worked really well with the Rockville Center Police as well. Commissioner Vafides as well has been a really great partner in our efforts to make sure that we are maintaining the best safety protocols that we can. Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have a couple more presentations tonight, Madam President. I will ask, and this is the first time I actually get to introduce him. Dr. Zuar has mentioned me a lot in the 9 concerts that we've had over the past month and a half, but now I get to introduce him, and I'm not as good as he is. He's the hardest working man in show business. He has all the jokes that you need to have. He's awesome at that, and he just gave us 9 absolutely wonderful journeys through the power of music and how children get to collaborate and create together. So, Dr. Zuar, thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for having me. Hope you had a happy Festivus, Mr. Gavin.
I knew you were going to get the Festivus. There's almost no doubt he was going to give me the Festivus joke.
Okay, there we go. You can turn the page. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, and thank you, Board of Ed, for having me. I'm delighted to be here and share with you our art and music programs. I decided to do this presentation sort of in reverse, like backwards mapping. Instead of starting, this is what we do from kindergarten through 5 and middle school, I thought I'd start at the end and then work backwards. The end being our graduates, our alumni, and then talk to you a little bit about the commencement level, IB music in high school, and then how do you get there? And then that brings us to all the rest. So first, I want to thank Dr. Doreen Freiling, who a couple of years ago, because we do this an alumni music night each June, she's developed a cadre of students who graduated and created a Facebook page. And through that Facebook page, she did a survey. There are 225 members of the Facebook page, alumni of our music program, Southside High School alumni who took music. And we had 75, last time I checked, respondents to the survey. So the question that she asked the alumni are, first, what are you doing with your life? And second, how did the Rockville Center Music Program affect them? What effect did it have? So I want to share some of the responses to that survey. First of all, our favorite quote, Mr. Gavin and mine, came from an anesthesiologist whose quote is there in yellow: the importance of practice and listening to others. And I quipped when I heard this, having enjoyed the services of an anesthesiologist or two, I really appreciate the importance of practice and how important it is for any medical professional to listen, you know. But that's something that person learned in music. And I don't want to read to you. I will allow you to read some of these quotes yourself. But let me just generalize and synthesize all of the quotes you can read as I'm telling you about this have in common the following: that life skills that they learned in music are transferable to all areas and all professions. And so we can read some additional ones. No matter what you do for a living, here is somebody who's in public relations. Shaped me into a more confident person. I hear that also from theater alumni, right? Being in theater. Helped me find my passion in music. I'm going to turn to the next. Down the bottom, there's one person who's actually in vocal performance. And the skills I needed to get into the university level program helped me understand what I need to do in order to get there. I will say that we run a high school program designed to help those who may want to major in music or music education or performing arts in college. But we all know the vast majority of our graduates do not major in the performing arts. So this is important to understand, that making music and art is a process. It's a process, and it involves rehearsal, trial and error. You refine, you revise, you reflect, and you perfect. All of those things I just mentioned, revise, refine, reflect, perfect, are the hallmarks of good instruction and good learning in general, not just in the arts. And they're also the hallmarks of what we all do in our professional lives. Right? We refine, we revise, we reflect, and we make it better. So it kind of goes together with general life skills. Mr. Gavin and Dr. Moriarty asked me to also share with you some of the exciting honors that we have received. The district, for the 6th year in a row last year, was named a Best Community for Music Education by the National Association of Music Merchants. That's the NAM Foundation. And 4% of the districts in the nation receive this distinction. The distinction is awarded to districts that demonstrate outstanding achievement and efforts to provide music access and education to all students. And in the process, they consider funding, graduation requirements, participation, instructional time, facilities, and community support. And so there is a questionnaire. I just filled it out, submitted it for 2023. I hope there's no reason to think we won't be awarded the same distinction in 2023, but for 6 years in a row. So I'm very proud. And that's not only my music teachers. I think it's the support we get from you, the support we get from you, and also the town we live in. You know, I always put in that questionnaire, you know, we have a symphony orchestra that's resident in town. We have the Guild for the Arts. Kids have the opportunities outside of school to do theater, church choirs, all kinds of ways they can be engaged in the arts, even outside of school. So it's a great town, but it's also a great school district. So on this subject, we also, each year, send a number of students to NISMA All-State. This year, we sent Toby Dwyer and Ali Polaro. Toby is a trombonist, Ali is a flautist. Since I've been here, this is my 19th year, we have sent anywhere from 2 and as many as 10 students to NISMA All-State. So a typical year, I would say it would be like 3 or 4 kids go to NISMA All-State, and it's up in Rochester. You can see from these photographs, the concert hall at the Eastman School of Music, the Eastman Theater, is a very impressive hall. Everything looks good and sounds good in that hall when you go to these concerts, and it is remarkable. And we do have a shot of both Toby in the lower picture and Ali in the upper picture rehearsing this year with All-State. We also send a bunch of kids each year to All County. All County in Nassau, by the way, for some of the alphabet soup, NISMA, NYSSMA, is the New York State School Music Association. NMEA is the Nassau Music Association, Music Educators Association. So that's the All County, which typically occurs at the Tillis Center. It did not happen in 2021 and 2022. We did not have an all-county concert. But this year, it is back. This year, we're growing back. We are about at 54 students district-wise. Typically, in other years, we have anywhere from 80 to 100 students. But I think the whole venture is kind of just getting back up and running. So I anticipate in the coming years, we'll get back to our normal fighting strength of about 80 to 100 students. We also have, during the month of March, to celebrate Music in Our Schools Month, we run an all-district series of concerts, a band, an orchestra, a chorus, and each night there'll be an elementary band, middle school band, and a high school band, elementary orchestra, middle school orchestra, high school orchestra, chorus, so on. And it's a fun night. At that night also, the Sponsors of the Arts, who's a wonderful support group, they distribute at those concerts scholarships, and they give scholarships to students in music, but also in visual art and in theater, and they distribute them at those concerts. So it's a fun and exciting night. Finally, NAFME, more alphabet, National Association for Music Education. That's the granddaddy. That's the National Association. NISMA is the state association, and NMEA is the county organization. But they run each year, on alternate years, all Eastern and all National. So the Eastern Division, obviously the East Coast of the U.S., and the National is the whole country. This year we sent Isabella Coles to an honors choir at the national level. It was held in Baltimore back in November, and we're very proud of Isabella. The last, I said this at all the concerts, so Matt's heard this 9 or 10 or 12 times. The last all-national student we had was Jack McCabe in the year 2015, so it's been 7 years. All-national is a rare but exciting occurrence to have one of our Rockville Center kids go. All Eastern, we do have 1 or 2, you know, in those alternate years to go to All Eastern. So there are some photographs of kids wearing masks from last year's All Eastern and All National conferences. Also, I should mention ACDA, more alphabet, American Choral Directors Association. Dr. Freiling, by the way, is the New York State president of the American Choral Directors Association, and she typically sends a couple of students to either their Eastern Division or National Honors choirs as well. This year we had 3 students perform in August at the New York State, the summer conference of NISMA, but there was an ACDA honors choir, and coming up next month in February, we're sending 2 students to the National ACDA Honors Choir in Cincinnati, Ohio. And again, Isabella Coles is one of them, but also Sarah Baruso. So we're excited for our kids who get nationally recognized and recognized all over the East Coast of the U.S. So our commencement level music at the high school level is IB Music. IB Music, when I first came here, there were 6 students enrolled in IB Music in the year 2004-05. We now typically enroll anywhere from 25 to 30 kids. In fact, we had to, a couple of years ago, split it because 30 kids didn't fit in the lab where there's only 20 stations. So we're able to offer both the standard level and higher level as 2 separate sections. So that's exciting. Dr. Freiling organizes each year an IB Music Night in October where students can perform their works and record them, which is part of what they need to do for their IB portfolio. So that occurred on October 19th, 2022, and students perform pieces they wrote or pieces they prepared. But I must tell you, you can see from looking at the screen that 2 of the pieces represented, one is in traditional notation, but it was notated using a music writing software, Finale or Sibelius. So it's computer-assisted music writing. And below you see sequencing software, I think it's Logic Pro. On the IB Music concert that happened October 19th, half of all the pieces performed were computer-assisted in one way or another. And you can see students singing and playing their instruments in the more traditional way. But I mentioned it that night, and I mentioned it to Mr. Gavin, that a concert where half the music was computer-assisted would have been unheard of just like 5 or 7 years ago, you know, the way it's changing. And the IB even changed its requirement structure to allow much more electronic composition and electronic generation of composition. So we're showing that, like I said, half the compositions were electronically generated. And I thought it fit beautifully with the game on process we're involved in of bringing a lot of computer-assisted encoding, computer-assisted instruction. So we're already there, and I'm very pleased about that. Also, just to mention it, on the same night in October, we usually induct students into the Tri-M Music Honor Society. This past October, we inducted 76 members of that Music Honor Society. And those kids, in addition to requirements to be in the Honor Society, you know, maintaining a certain grade point average and so on, also do community service. And I know that Mr. Murphy started it when he was principal, and Dr. Walsh has continued, that they perform, like on a Friday afternoon, they just play in the hallway as students are leaving the building. They do work over the holidays, you know, to the senior center, hospitals, and so on. So the Tri-M Music Honor Society is a great commencement level group. So how do you get to IB Music if you're in our high school? The courses we offer on the way to IB Music and sometimes concurrently with IB Music, because there's an expectation that IB Music students perform. So we have our auditioned ensembles, the chamber orchestra, the chamber singers, and the wind ensemble and jazz ensemble. We have the general concert orchestra, choraleers, concert band, and stage band, and 2 courses, music theory, music tech. Again, when I first came here, the only path to IB Music was music theory. But as IB said, we recognize that the electronic and computer-generated music making is becoming more the norm. They allowed technology, so our enrollment in technology blossomed. I believe we have 3 sections of technology. We have 1 section of music theory, but all of those are ways to get there. And in grade 8, students can take something called Music Studio, which is a more rudimentary exploration of the same skills, making music electronically and in traditional ways, composition primarily. So kids can take Music Studio for high school credit in the 8th grade. So these are all what lead us to IB Music. And that brings us back now to the middle school music program. I mentioned Music Studio for high school credit, but in grade 6 we have something called exploratory. They get only 1 mark period of music, because then they get technology and other skills throughout that 6th grade. But most of our students satisfy their state requirement to take music. By the way, the state requires music instruction from grades 1 through 8. And the way we satisfy that in the middle school is through ensemble music making in grades 6 and 7. So we have band 6, 7, and 8, orchestra 6, 7, and 8, chorus 6, 7, and 8. We have extracurricular music making in the jazz band and chorale that meets on Thursday nights. I just left them when I came over here. They rehearse every Thursday night. But I should mention that students can opt out of their ensemble in grade 8 if they take studio music or studio art for high school credit. So that's an option that exists. That's in the state requirements, but also what we do locally. So far, so good? Good. And then how do you get to the middle school program? Well, our elementary music program, elementary general music is K through 5. It was 1 through 5 until last year, and we now have, I'm very happy to say, music in kindergarten and art as well. But chorus is offered in grades 4 and 5. Band is offered in 4 and 5. Orchestra in 4 and 5. And kids take the recorder in grade 3. The recorder, in addition to being a hands-on music making, there's a lot of classroom instruments, but it also kind of sets a little foundation if they go into woodwinds. Some of the fingerings on the recorder resemble the fingerings on the flute and the clarinet, so it kind of gets them ready with their muscle skills and so on for the woodwind instruments. And it's also a good way for kids to learn to read music. Until that moment, they've only been singing as they read music. Now they can read music and play an instrument. Should I just go all the way through to the end and then stop for questions, or stop after music?
Go all the way through.
Go all the way through. Okay. So our visual art program, again, I'll do the same thing. At the commencement level in our high school, we have IB Portfolio Visual Art 1 and IB Visual Art 2. There are independent projects in art: computer graphics, 3D computer modeling, painting and drawing 1 and 2, photography 1 and 2, sculpture and ceramics 1 and 2, and again, studio art, which is offered both in grade 8, and again, if you want to take it in high school, you can, if you missed out in grade 8. It's just some samples of student artwork, and all the way on the right is from our sculpture and ceramics class. Those look like pretty high-class items. Looks like from somebody's china closet. Just to play up, again, as I did for music, some of the honors and distinctions. Mr. Gamache, our high school facilitator in art, was the guest artist at the Huntington Fine Arts Festival in November, and I think his work was on display from November until January. Mr. Caracton did a thing last year for the open house, a 20s night, where he had kids wear clothing from the 1920s. They had records playing from the 1920s. They looked at art from the 1920s. And it was really a fun night. And I want to come back to that in a minute. Also, Mr. Caracton arranged for a visiting artist, an alumna, Emily Dorfline. And there are some photographs of Emily working. She's a ceramicist, I believe. And she's working there with students in our school. And there she is with Mr. Caracton. By the way, the middle item is Mr. Gamache's, one of his pieces that was displayed at the Huntington Museum. Each year, the Scholastic magazine has an awards, offers awards, and we had last year 3 gold keys, 3 silver keys, and 5 honorable mentions. And each year, there's an all-county art exhibit. For the past 2 years, it's been virtual, but we still have students' art displayed virtually for the all-county art exhibit, and usually they award one graduating senior a scholarship, and last year's winner was Alanya Garcia. So that's all county. I want to go back to Mr. Caracton and the 1920s. I have found that art, visual art, music, theater, is a tremendous way for kids to connect with history. I mention it because these kids learned about the 1920s, I think, in a way that's more intense than reading about it, you know. One of my first years here, they did the play Brighton Beach Memories, and those kids were living in the 1930s. And I remember talking with some of the cast members about names, from that period. And it makes them curious. Who is this person that we're talking about? And you can go back and read. I will share with you that when I was a freshman in high school, my high school did a production of 1776. And so John Adams is the protagonist of that musical. Because of that musical, I had a lifelong interest in American history. So as an adult, I read the McCullough biography of John Adams and George Washington. The book was 1776. I got interested in American history. I read the Schlesinger biographies of Robert Kennedy. There's a 2-volume set. So I got really interested in American history, but why? Because of my high school play. So the arts draw you in to history, I think, in a very significant way. And I'll leave you with one thought. Nobody knows anything about Pope Sixtus, but everybody knows Michelangelo, who was a servant of Pope Sixtus, right? The Sistine Chapel, and he painted a chapel for him. But we all know Michelangelo. So the art, if you know Michelangelo, you kind of get drawn into the history of the 16th century. So it's a wonderful way to connect to history and literature and all kinds of things. By the way, just FYI, the art department is preparing an exhibit at our Rockville Center Public Library, a brainchild of Mr. Gavin, but we have been meeting with the library staff, and in the month of May, K through 12, we're going to have kids' artwork at the public library. So we're excited about that. At the middle school level, we have art in grade 7, and we have the offer of studio art in grade 8. And on the elementary level, again, K through 5. It was 1 through 5, but it's now K through 5. Just FYI, the Art 7 meets every other day. Studio Art meets every day because, again, it's for high school credit. And at K5, they meet once per 6-day cycle. I believe that's all I got. And I'll certainly entertain questions. And if you want me to fill in any of the blanks or...
A couple of things. First, it's always hard to follow you because you reference Michelangelo, so that's pretty good. So it's really hard to do that. But I do want to talk a little bit about how theater is very impactful for our students. I know that I saw it in the play Clue, that, just from the whole fact of, we see it when we see it in concerts where kids come together to create art. I happened to get a backstage, I guess I popped in on the kids because I went down the wrong hallway, and they were getting ready for the show. And they were all together in a circle. Huddle. And they were chanting together in a big huddle, and I don't know if they were singing a song or chanting. All right? I don't remember because I was like, what am I seeing here? And the importance of it was that sense of community that was made in a circle. That then they went out and walked out on stage and absolutely blew us away. But that sense of community around the arts is so important, and I really thank you for your leadership in this area, on all of our areas, all the work that you have done, and I think it's very important and a vital part of the Rockville Center Public Schools, so thank you on behalf of all of us.
Thank you for that, and I will shine the light back on the teachers and the directors and all that. I'll take credit for hiring them, but but the credit really goes to them. They're an amazing group. And I second what you said. The other thing you hear a lot from theater parents is, oh my God, I had no idea my kid had that in him or her. At home, they seem very withdrawn, or even in class, sometimes teachers will say that. Kids kind of come out of their shell, when they're up on stage, and it's a beautiful thing to see, because they feel safe and they're part of that community,
And they're taking advantage of the opportunity.
Yep.
And I feel proud to offer them that opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Z. Questions from the board?
I'll just start by saying thank you, Dr. Zuar. I really appreciate your presentation and just the arts in general. I feel like so many times in schools our focus is on the core academic subjects, math and English and science and social studies, and this is how we define intelligence. But really it's the arts, I think, that we really need to start looking at more as a definition of potential, of who we are, of who we can be, and ingraining them into what we want our kids to be. And I thank you for doing that, because I feel like in Rockville Center, the arts are important. Music, theater, fine arts. We see that. We see the awards that we're winning for it. I think that speaks a lot to children as well. It gets them involved in it. So I appreciate the fact that your staff have continued to elevate arts in the district, and the success that we have is really due to the capacity, the dedication of you and your staff, so thank you. The only two questions I had were both at the middle school with regards to music. I noticed that we have extracurricular band and chorale, but no orchestra. Is there a reason that we don't have?
The only reason is that no one has stepped forward to it. Actually, Mrs. Mark did it for a brief time when she was at the middle school. I'm talking about 15 years ago or more. She did it for, I think, 2 years, and then ceased to do it. If the orchestra teacher would like to offer an extracurricular orchestra, I would certainly welcome it.
And then, so for a student who does orchestra, if there is no extracurricular, are they allowed to join the chorale, or is that only for core students?
Well, the chorale was originally instituted specifically for instrumental students who also wanted to sing.
Got it.
You know, and keep up the singing. You know, and incidentally, I didn't mention it, but in grade 6, we still do, I get this from parents a lot, because you know, in grade 5 and 4, everybody's in chorus. So whether you're an orchestra or band, doesn't matter, everybody's in chorus. So parents do call and say, I want them to play an instrument, but I don't want to drop chorus. So we do something in grade 6 where the chorus teacher meets the kids before school starts. You know, and then in grade 7 and 8, they have the opportunity for chorale, so they can keep singing even if they play instruments. So that's why it was initiated.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I feel like I just kind of went through that scenario 2 weeks ago when we had to make that decision, and it was heartbreaking.
Right.
Because my daughter loves both equally. So that's great to know. The only other question I had was about like art in grade 6. What do we have no arts offerings in grade 6 at all?
We have no visual art. We have music,
visual
but we
arts.
don't have visual art in grade 6.
Is there like a reason that we don't have? Is that part of the curriculum, or is that something that we could consider adding as an option? Or
I think we certainly could. There used to be a component of exploratory that was art. Exploratory has changed a lot over the years, but that little piece was the only 6th grade. You know, so many of the answers to these kind of questions, and I know the question came up too, like why not offer additional art at the elementary level because it's only once a cycle, whereas music is twice. The answer to those questions for me has been staffing and budget, right? So you know, over the years, it could happen that we offer more, but it just means additional staff, which would have an impact on the budget, which until fairly recently, I honestly, you know, I didn't feel that, you know, I could even propose it, you know. When enrollment necessitated it, I certainly did. Like, for example, we had to add a .2 art teacher at the elementary level because we had so many splits, you know. But it's really a question of budget and staffing.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I personally would love to see us expand our art offerings into 6th grade, and especially at the elementary school, because that is a place where students shine, and that might be their one thing. And then to have a whole year where they don't even have access to that in grade 6, especially in a transition year.
Right.
So hopefully maybe we as can have that conversation. Thank you so much, Dr. Zuar.
I'm in favor of the discussion.
If I could jump off, because it applies to what Erica was saying too. So with the budget season coming up, I also wonder if it's a good idea to possibly offer music studio in 9th grade as well. Because I know when you get to the 8th grade level and you have to make a choice, you are faced with that same decision.
Right.
Am I going to take music or art? Maybe some students would like to take both, because there's other things that you're offered in 8th grade that you're not offered until then.
Right.
And it's you know, a heavy academic year. So I wonder, last night at the middle school concert, we saw that stage was flooded with kids in the music program. I mean, it was crowded everywhere.
Right.
So just looking ahead and knowing that those students are going to keep coming through music, might it make sense to propose expanding studio music
So
or
studio
music studio into
music at
ninth?
the high school level is really music technology.
Okay, so
It's music technology, music theory are using the skills they learned in music studio. So
right, but if you haven't taken music studio in 8th grade,
you're not precluded.
you can still take
Oh, yeah.
music technology. And
Sure.
would anybody benefit from kind of just dappling through to see where their interests lie? Because when we get to IB, now we're serious students of music or art,
Right.
or both. I don't know if you could do both, but I'm just wondering if there's more opportunities to offer at the beginning stages so people can kind of feel out where their interests are, their talents, and, you know, so that they pursue the right path.
I would say that the thing about music theory, and music studio, which they all have in common, is they resemble a visual arts class. Meaning, in a visual arts class, unlike an ensemble where you have to perform as part of a group, when you're in those lab classes in music, you're contained to your workstation. So if you go into a music studio class or a tech, or you'll see some kids with a USB port guitar, some kids are playing keyboards, some kids are sequencing, some kids, so kids are working at what they can do or what they want to, so it's very individualized. So any kid can take music tech or music theory, there's no prerequisite, and if they took studio, fine, then they'll be spiraling a little higher on the spiral, but everybody can be there and working at their own level, because
Thank
it's
you.
more individualized.
Thank you. And just to thank you for the wonderful concert season. I'd rather say it to you when you're here than later. They were great.
My pleasure.
We really enjoyed watching them. Thank you.
I want to thank you as well. Maybe selfish, but I had kids that went through the program, and one of my college daughters' college essay was actually entitled "Thank You for the Music," and it was all about her music journey from a child when she was 4, all through the schools, and what all of your wonderful staff and programs have done to help her. She's not a music major, but like you said in those slides,
Most aren't.
it helped her with speaking publicly and being able to do that, and it's lending itself to her major and what she's done in college. So I can't say enough about the music program and the arts program. I had another one who went through that. But one of the things I wanted to say also is the way you loop back and your staff loops back. Every year when they do the Hallelujah Chorus, it's amazing how many alumni come back to participate in that. It's really something that brings alumni back to the building. It brings parents of alumni back to the concerts because they want to see that happen, and it truly was amazing, so thank you.
And a lot of those kids that sang the Hallelujah Chorus, they'll be back in June. Did I give you the date of the alumni concert in June?
I don't think you did.
I don't think I did either. I wrote it down. It's alumni concert will be June 20th in 2023. So it's a fun night. It really is a fun night. And you saw some of the photographs. I didn't identify any of the people. You might have recognized Jackie Wong's son, Justin, Craig Joseph. There are some people who were great stars in our theater and music programs who continue to come back and who are making lives, in the arts and sharing. The other great thing about that alumni music night, they share with the current high school kids, afterwards, informally.
It's great to bring them back and encourage the other children to participate in it. Another thing that I thought, I don't know if there's a night where we do a separate presentation on IB Theater, but that dovetails so nicely with everything you've done here, because there's that whole IB Theater program, and the musicals that they do here at the high school have a lot of participation, not only from the children who decide to do IB music, but those that do the IB Theater and the IB Art. They do the sets. So it's such a collaboration of all the things you do, and a culmination of when you go and see these high school productions. I mean, they're almost professional. They're amazing. But I don't know if that's a separate slideshow on IB Theater, but it's all related.
Could be.
And it's a great program.
Ironically, I don't supervise IB Theater. I
Right.
supervise the productions.
Yeah.
But that would be an interesting thing to look at. And a lot of the same kids, obviously, are in the curricular course that are in the extracurricular
And I think
productions.
sorry to interrupt, Dr. Z. I think we're in the process now of having conversations with the high school about not only doing presentations about the programs we do and inviting parents in, including parents of like 8th graders, 7th graders, to kind of see what's going on, but having the kids be part of the conversation. Because one thing I can tell you is our students can present about what they do, and they do it well, and they do it passionately. So one of our first things that we've been noodling around with is the idea of, the DECA Club and business, and bringing in Chamber of Commerce and inviting the Chamber of Commerce and our parents to show the kind of skills that our students are developing and have. And show that as a community organization, we'd love to work with members of the community on business type issues, whether it's marketing, social media marketing, even we've also thought creatively about the other area that Dr. Zuar supervises, which is technology. Our technology students are amazingly creative. If you walk down the hallway down to the woodshop and fabrication lab, I was blown away the first time I saw some of the creations that they did. And there's an opportunity for our students not only to support local businesses, but I go through the idea of entrepreneurship. That same piece goes with IB Theater. The same piece goes, the idea of having some of the theater kids come back and talk to our younger students about what lies ahead or what potentially could lie ahead. So I really appreciate that, and I think, and I've always been a big proponent of our students are our best ambassadors.
And Mr. Gavin, even...
Not that you're bad.
Even in theater, you have, besides actors, singers, and dancers, you got the kids run the lights, the kids run the sound, the kids run, there's so much technical, some of kids who have gone on to do it professionally have been technicians, not who learned from Russ Reed, what to do.
Aren't we about to see the student-created plays and
The student
productions?
directors are coming up. Yeah.
Looking forward to, though, I also happen to pop through. It must be the hallway I go through, but they're always rehearsing. So, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? They're like, oh, we kind of wrote our own play. So I'm like, oh, okay. And we had a nice little conversation about that. So we're looking forward to that as well.
Right, that's all part of the IB theater program,
Yep.
the student directed. And the greatest thing I think about that is that it gets all the kids involved. There are kids who are normally athletes and they play 3 sports, but they'll perform in the student directed. So it's a really nice collaborative effort. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're good?
Thank you. And I agree that it shows students all of the ways that you can be involved, right? The student directed plays, they're writing the scenes, they're running all of the technician work behind the scenes. But I feel like one of the most important things that comes out of the arts, as you went through the alumni quotes and how it builds their confidence and the importance of practice and listening to others, it really does also cycle through a sort of social emotional capacity as well, and a competency, and I think it's really brave to be a performer at any age, right? From our earliest concert performers through our seniors in the high school plays and musicals, and to either whether you're a fearless performer and you just stand up and you're ready to go, or you face that fear, you feel the fear and you do it anyway. And I think that's such an important skill that our students are developing throughout their time in our district. And I appreciate the way you sort of gave us, especially parents watching at home, the breadth of opportunities and how deeply the arts are embedded, music and art, throughout the entire K-12 experience here. So thank you for that. And I feel like you sort of begged the question a couple times, like, how do you get to IB Music? How do you get to Carnegie Hall,
Practice,
Dr. Zuar?
practice.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zuar, for
Thank you, Mrs.
ending a
Barrett.
very successful winter concert season
Yes,
with
indeed.
us here tonight,
Thanks.
and presenting such a thoughtful presentation and the story of the arts. Very much appreciated, as
Thank
you
you.
always are, so thank you.
But if I could leave you with a little anecdote, some years ago, we took a bunch of IB music students to the City Opera when there was a City Opera. I think the pandemic wiped it out. But when there was a City Opera at Lincoln Center, and I had a friend who was a dramaturg, and she brought our kids on a backstage tour. So we were backstage, looked at all the scenery, and we emerged from the backstage out into the orchestra pit of that great concert hall in Lincoln Center, and kids were looking up, oohing and eyeing, they're in the orchestra pit. And they're all milling around and taking pictures with it. And here's a girl looking at a chair with a phone. She's taking a picture of an empty chair. I said to the girl, "Why are you photographing an empty chair?" She said, "I intend to sit in it one day." Thank you.
Very powerful, thank you.
Okay, now good luck, Dr. Moriarty. We have another presentation for the board this evening. I am very pleased to introduce Dr. Nicole Moriarty and Tracy Broderick, who will be coming up and talking a little bit about the science of reading, which has a big impact on reading instruction, the foundations of reading instruction, and the foundations of learning as a whole. I was very excited when we saw this presentation about how detailed and thoughtful it is, and we look forward to it. So Dr. Moriarty, take it away.
Oh, goodness. Well, Dr. Zuar has set the stage, let me tell you. So I just want to let everybody know I played the clarinet and I played the flute. I was in the drama for a little while. What else? The History of Art book was my favorite book of all time. It's like 900 pages of art and history together, so. Okay. Well, thank you for having us here this evening, and Happy New Year. We're very excited to speak to you about the science of reading and literacy. It is important to know that every slide here in this presentation can literally be a graduate class or part of a graduate class. So I'm not going to do it justice like it could really truly be done. This is going to be like a quick, down and dirty, this is the science of reading. And I also have to say that I am standing here on the shoulders of many researchers and many educators, and educators like Mrs. Broderick and our teachers here in our district who are engaging in this work every single day. And I thank Mrs. Broderick very much for agreeing to be tortured and come present, right, and be like, all this, and share our journey. I would also like to thank in advance the support of Mrs. Love and Dr. Sonia Hood, who I am very sad will be leaving us, but very happy that she's moving on to, a bigger, greater position in life, and that's great. But they both have been instrumental members of the literacy team throughout our time here and working on this. So let's get started. So the history of literacy. Reading is relatively a new concept, a new cultural development. While there were some people who could read with the invention of writing in Mesopotamia, it wasn't really until the end of the Industrial Revolution that many people could really begin to read across the world. So the human brain didn't really develop and evolve to learn how to read the same way in which it learned for spoken language. In order for us to read, our brain has to repurpose the brain functions that were developed over thousands of years for other, more basic needs. So this presentation tonight is very timely and so important in light of the various Board of Education goals that we have surrounding multi-tiered system of support and our ELA curriculum, as well as the goals that we have for our learners, which are to graduate learners and develop learners who are skilled readers, writers, and communicators. So tonight we're going to explore very quickly the theory, the science around reading. We're going to talk about how it has informed our instruction in the past, how it continues to inform our instruction today, and the practices that we engage in, as well as the action steps that we've taken this year and we plan to take on moving forward. So before we actually get into the cognitive science and the neuroscience of reading, let's just get a basic definition of what the science of reading is, because it's very important for us to work from a basis of commonality when it comes to language. So the science of reading is a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. This research has been conducted over 50 years around the world, and it is derived from various fields. Tonight, we're specifically going to be focusing on cognitive psychology, neuroscience, and education, the implications for our practice. So in 1986, in an attempt to explain the main components of reading, two researchers developed a simple visual called the simple view of reading in order to simply explain the complexities of reading. They tried to show that reading comprehension is not the sum, but the product of two components, word recognition and language comprehension, which then equals skilled reading comprehension. So much so that if either one of these areas were weak, reading comprehension is diminished. That's why it is a sum. That's why it is a product, not a sum. No amount of skill in one component can compensate for a lack of skill in another area. While this is a simple view of a developmental process, skilled reading development is not simple, and it is very complex. And in an attempt to uncover the complexities of reading, the National Reading Panel was convened and in 2001 released its report of scientific research on reading and its implications for reading instruction. They corroborated the simple view of reading, that it's word recognition times language comprehension, but it further separated out the essential components of literacy instruction. These became known as what we refer to as the 5 pillars of literacy. It is important to note that the panel did not identify any one program as the most effective program, nor did it find one program that taught all 5 of these pillars equally well. Instead, they identified practices in instructional design that we can utilize as a framework to ensure that we are teaching literacy most effectively. But we really couldn't stop there, because it's really even more complex than saying and identifying that there's these 5 pillars. So 1 year later, Dr. Scarborough further deconstructed the simple view of reading and the 5 pillars into explicit skills for instruction. We turn to this reading rope that it's affectionately called for a more in-depth understanding of the subcomponents within word recognition and language comprehension. Essentially, Scarborough's rope is a visual metaphor for the development of skills over time, and it's represented by those 8 strands that lead to skilled reading. Now again, a weakness in any area can lead to reading difficulties, And as we will continue to see, we need to consider each aspect as we think about curriculum and instruction. So that was a lot. It was over 50 years of research jammed into 3 slides, right?
That was like, 6 minutes, not bad.
Yeah, good. Okay, good. We were worried that that was going to take 40 minutes. So I just want to pause, and I just want us to look at this visual for a second. Around the 1950s, the International Literacy Association was first created because we realized as a nation that we really needed to focus on literacy. More people were going to school, more people were going and continuing for a K-12 education, right? Great. So there's a whole bunch of body of research that's done. The theorists behind the simple view of reading attempted to just explain that to us visually and break it down into 2 components. Then in 2000, we have the National Reading Panel that identified really 5 areas that fit into those 2 components. And then within a year after that, we have Scarborough's rope that really then identifies 8 areas that we need to work on simultaneously in order to be able to cultivate skilled readers, writers, and communicators in our schools. So watching your children grow up and watching them learn how to read really is magical, right? That first time they hold that book and they're going through it and they're reading it to you, it's fantastic. But knowing really how they get there is a science. But we really can't talk about literacy without talking about the environmental factors that may influence their ability to learn. So again, it's not so simple. It's not just the 5 pillars. It's not just the 8 strands, right? There's this whole big world that influences how we now take in information and how well then we're able to learn and grow and become skilled readers. So this professor from NYU, Carolyn Strom, in 2022, took that reading rope and added to the metaphor. She inverted it. She made it into a tree. And if you can see the ropes of the ropes of the rope, right? The strands of the rope are the tree roots, and those tree roots are living in an environment. And that environment can be filled with nutrients and love and support and enriching activities and all those things that we learn. And sometimes it might not be. Sometimes there might be trauma. Sometimes there might be cognitive deficits. Sometimes there might be language impairments, attention deficits. There's a whole range of things that can also then impact a learner's ability to be able to successfully read as a skilled reader. So we call those risk factors. But they're also balanced in this environment by what we call resilience factors. And that consists of instruction, growth mindset, task-focused behavior, and all of the other things that are outlined there for us. Tonight, we're really focusing on the instruction, and then from there, we also have a recommendation around growth mindset. So let's recap again. The science of reading is not an ideology or a philosophy. It is not a one-size-fits-all approach. It is not a program of instruction, and it is not one single specific component of instruction, such as phonics. It is, in fact, opposite of that. It is not a ladder. Instead, it is a framework that can utilize to ensure we can utilize to ensure we are educating our learners with evidence-based research pedagogical practices that are brain-based and brain-compatible. It is a comprehensive process that requires sustained and deliberate attention to all of the strands of the ropes, or simply stated, to the 5 pillars. So how does the reading brain work? I did not plan this, by the way, but I should go with it and say that I did plan this. Like an orchestra. So again, we're learning from, right, like an orchestra. Because the various parts of the brain are working together. Just like we see here when we see our children on stage, and we see the clarinet with the flute, with the trombone, and they're all working together, and it appears like there's this effortless harmony, like it was always just meant to be. But that took weeks, months, hours of practice in order for that to really come to fruition. So much like an orchestra, people who become experienced readers use and integrate several portions of their brain to process written symbols, translate them into sounds, and then to make meaning out of them. So while we may not realize it, as we move our eyes across the page, each word is slowly brought into the central region of our retina, only to be exploded into a myriad of fragments that our brain later piece back together. It is only because these processes have become automatic and unconscious, thanks to years of practice, that we are under the illusion that reading is simple and effortless. I read this book 10 years ago, and I reread portions of this book to prepare for this presentation, and that stood out to me as, wow, that's really what's going on inside of our brains, and we don't even know it. We don't even realize it. We don't even think it. So, cognitive scientists and neuroscientists, they make everything so complicated. They have all these fancy words, right? So we really want to know, how does our brain do this effortlessly? So we do turn to neuroscientists to really try to figure that out. But educators like Dr. Strom help us bridge the divide between science and practice. And she created this wonderful visual for us where she kind of like made metaphors about our vision region, our sounds, and our meaning. And we're going to move into that in 1 minute. And in this visual, what we're really trying to do as educators is to create a superconductor neural highway that just completely connects and completely works very effortlessly. And we want to go from the vision, the sound, the meaning. We want to eventually just kind of cut that all out and go straight from vision to meaning. So Dr. Strong, along with scientists like Deheen, like to refer to this process as a neurological backflip, or neuronal repurposing. Isn't that a cool word? Neuronal repurposing. So right now, research is telling us that it takes children many years to rewire the brain to read. Dr. Strong refers to this as a neurological backflip. So now, maybe the coolest part about all of this is this next part. So in addition to identifying the incredibly complex nature of reading, neuroscientists are furthering our knowledge about our brain's plasticity. So now, in looking at this visual and these brain scans, the adult brain scans of those who recently learned how to read, which is represented in the middle with newly literate, looked similar to the scans of adults who learned to read when they were young, which is represented by the literate scan on the left-hand side. This means that teaching someone how to read actually changes the way our brain looks and the way our brain operates. It also means that we can change the brain at any age, and that is very, very cool. It's amazing, it's inspiring to know that we as educators, we get to do this every day, shape the way a brain looks. Okay, so what? How do we do this? So the implication for us as educators are multifaceted. But first, we can use the pillars of literacy as a framework for what we should be teaching. Second, teaching should be explicit, systematic, and cumulative, based on diagnostic assessments that help us to be responsive teachers. That is what is referred to as structured literacy. So I want to frame this out for us just a little bit more so we have a more common language that we can work from. Explicit means the concepts are directly taught and practiced. Systematic means the skills are taught in a stair-step fashion. Each skill builds on the next, and builds on the last, and they are taught in a logical order that starts with simple information to more complex. Cumulative means all the information builds upon earlier knowledge. Diagnostic and responsive means students' unique strengths and weaknesses are identified through assessments, and their needs are met using differentiated instruction. You were right, they were out of order. The instructional approach is one we're all familiar with, the gradual release of responsibility, or the I do, we do, you do approach. This allows the teachers to model the skills to the learners where they make their thinking visible and make the implicit explicit. During instruction, it is recommended that teachers provide meaningful interactions with language throughout the course of a period and throughout the course of the day, throughout the course of the week, and throughout the course of the month. It is also recommended that we increase learner responses. So it's each, every, all. We want to move discussions from like a tennis match more to a soccer match. And we want to provide every child an opportunity to respond through reading and through writing. And then we want to consider a feedback loop between the teacher and the student. So the teacher is constantly conferencing with the learners and constantly moving them up that staircase of complexity at their rate. Finally, the last recommendation coming from the panel would be that learners successfully complete activities at a high criterion level of performance. So I just have foundations up here as an example because it's part of the curriculum that we do use, and it is something that it is there and apparent for us. It's on the last sentence. Before progressing to the next unit, 80% of the class should be at or above benchmark. So there's a clear criterion. All of our students are to reach it. Those who don't then receive Tier 2 or Tier 3 services.
Well, now it's time that we're going to see the National Reading Panel and the recommendations made and how we implement them here at Rockville Center. One of the recommendations made was in the area of phonological awareness. Phonemic awareness instruction is teaching our learners to notice, articulate, and manipulate the smallest unit of sound. Each lesson focuses on 8 phonemic awareness skills: rhyming, onset fluency, isolating, blending, segmenting, adding, deleting, and substituting sounds. Here at Rockville Center, we are using a research-based program called Hegarty. It is 35 weeks of daily phonemic and phonological awareness lessons for grades K through 1. This year, we are also implementing Hegarty in grade 2. Hegarty provides our learners with consistent and repeated instruction that transfers to developing encoding and decoding skills. Hegarty is aligned with the science of reading and guides our teachers to provide effective instructional practices. Another recommendation was in the area of phonics. Phonics is a type of instruction that requires explicit, symptomatic, and cumulative teaching of spelling, sound, correspondence, and meaningful word parts. It builds the brain's orthographic processing systems that brings letters, sounds, meaning, and context together. Here at Rockville Center, since 2006, we have been using the Foundations curriculum. Foundations utilizes a structured literacy approach to make learning to read fun while laying the groundwork for lifelong literacy. Foundation is aligned with the science of reading and guides teachers to provide effective instructional practices. Fluency is a characteristic of skilled reading and is oftentimes referred to as the bridge between word identification and comprehension. With fluency, we want to focus in on reading accuracy, prosody, and automaticity. Here at Rockville Center, we use a multifaceted approach that consists of several structures such as guided, shared, and interactive reading. Throughout our classes, you may see choral, echo, and repeated reading, as well as reader's theater. The use of short stories and poetry also supports the development of fluency. Again, these practices are aligned to the science of reading.
So the last two pillars, vocabulary and comprehension, are built through exposure to books, material, and experiences with rich vocabulary. Throughout our classrooms, you will see the use of interactive read-alouds, book clubs, and discussion protocols to support the development of vocabulary and comprehension. What we find most interesting is the recommendation for connected texts and topics. Connected text and collaborative thinking is fundamental to the International Baccalaureate's MYP and IB programs. In these programs, learners are exposed to large concepts with a variety of texts that offer a study in intertextuality. To support the development of this comprehension that includes background knowledge and vocabulary for increased comprehension, we turn to curricular programs such as Mystery Science, Putnam Northern Westchester Integrated Social Studies, and the Middle Years program at the middle school. We also use the approaches to learning and the approaches to teaching which really supports our learners in learning how to learn, not just what they're learning. And the strategies from the research-based program Keys to Literacy are utilized as foundational comprehension strategies that can be transferred across disciplines and throughout a child's K-12 educational journey. So this year, we are in the throes of working diligently in cultivating an environment for our teachers to learn and grow with the science of reading. We partnered with the International Dyslexia Association to offer a workshop for our teachers as well as our neighboring districts, and I am in contact with them almost weekly around the things that we're doing here. Our reading teachers, math implementation coaches, ESL teachers, and admin spent the day learning from Dr. Christodoulou about the science of reading, and Mr. Gavin came as well, and he sat with us for a very long time. I think he saw me jump out of my seat 1,000 times. Teachers left energized and refreshed, appreciating the time they got to spend learning. They are truly committed to the education of our learners and should be commended on their love of learning as well and their commitment to keep growing. During Superintendent's Conference Day, the K-5 teachers read the National Reading Panel. Now it is 300 pages. I did not require them to read all 300 pages. I condensed it to their findings and to the implications and the recommendations. We worked together on identifying common language and practices. We also highlighted areas that we can improve upon. Co-creating our strengths and our action steps was really a wonderful way to begin the year, and it was a great opportunity for me as a new administrator to really start learning about what we do here at Rockville Center. Using the knowledge that the team presented, we engaged in a book club with our grade level teams for professional learning.
This book study provided our staff with affirmations of what we do here at Rockville Center supports the best of science, the truth of responsiveness, and a clear focus on continuing to provide our learners with experiences saturated with meaning. Here are some other things we have done this year at Rockville Center to further support our alignment with the science of reading. In kindergarten, the use of the MAP, Reading Fluency, assesses the learner's literacy based on the 5 pillars. The reports are broken down with the 5 pillars in mind and provides us with the diagnostic information we need to best meet the needs of our learners. We also engaged in foundations training for all K-2 teachers. I provide ongoing coaching support, modeling, and sample lesson planning. I also created a scope and sequence for the foundation units and a timeline for each unit assessment to ensure that each grade district-wide is working in unison. Haggerty was implemented this year. Training was provided for K-2 teachers and coaching continues. Our students and teachers are so enthusiastic with the use of this daily program. And I just have to take a minute. I walked into a kindergarten classroom around Thanksgiving, and they were doing Haggerty. And when the boy left, he had a little book, and it was all about things that he loves about Thanksgiving. So he's reading his little book, I love cranberries, I love turkey, and all of a sudden he goes, I love turkey, I love Haggerty! And I was like, oh, this just made goosebumps, because everything that the kids were saying, they're loving the program. So they took the book and he just used the program instead of Thanksgiving. He was talking about Haggerty. The keys to another new program that we brought to the district that follows this approach was the Keys to Literacy routine. This training happened with all the reading teachers. Now they push into their classrooms using this approach across the discipline, providing real-time support and professional learning to all their staff members. All of this allows us to engage in meaningful conversations because we are horizontally and vertically aligned. Myself, along with Dr. Moriarty, work also along with the building principals and teachers to analyze the data to further support our instructional moves. Ultimately, our goal is to bolster Tier 1 core instruction and limit the pull-out supports. In addition to the data analysis of literacy is a continual reflection. I would like to draw attention to the last 2 bullets of this analysis. We here at Rockville Center, we need to celebrate how we have begun to streamline instruction and assessments across the district in many ways in a very short time. It has been wonderful watching our students blossom and the benefits from teacher collaboration across the district.
Ms. Broderick has really been working very diligently and is very committed to literacy and to the education of our children here at Rockville Center. We are very lucky to have her and to have her in this position. In addition to the other work that was previously stated that Mrs. Broderick has engaged in, she has also designed professional learning opportunities for our K-5 staff members in the Keys to Literacy routine for our after-school professional learning hours. So not only did she learn a new program this year and take courses on this new program, she is now delivering instruction on that and supporting our teachers and supporting our learners. So Ms. Nisler from the high school also came to one of the trainings because these are routines that can be utilized K-12, again with that vertical alignment. As we know, learning is a social endeavor, and learning to read is even more so. Through cooperative learning structures and generating questions, which are all components of the KTL, these structures are again supported by the approaches to learning and the approaches to teaching. Students learn and practice comprehension strategies by working in cooperative pairs, having explicit instruction, the gradual release of responsibility, and really engaging with their texts as well as with each other. We're looking into training all of our reading teachers this spring to become facilitators of the Keys to Literacy. So as they team teach with their classroom teachers, they will be providing real-time, ongoing professional learning support within the classroom.
Something else that has come out of research and is a necessity, coming out of research is a necessity for early learning. This year, Rockville Center embarked in the Universal Pre-K. It is never too early to begin reading instruction, and RVC is well on its way of supporting our earliest learners. In November, myself, Dr. Hood, and Dr. Moriarty visited Lynbrook schools. We wanted to see a new phonics program that they had implemented last year. This phonics-based program takes a sound-based approach, which is different from Foundations, which is letter-based. Was very interesting to see how the students in 2 kindergarten classes were reading and writing CVC words as well as a sentence up to 6 words in late November. We are going to go back and visit this coming week and look forward to seeing not only the kindergarten classes, but their first grade classes as well. Remember, we are in the research stage of our analysis and no decisions have been made to change any programs.
So just as Tracy said, we are in this research stage, and with that comes continued research and continued learning. So I'm going to draw our attention to the pyramid. We want to continue to ask questions and think about things that we currently have in place, things that we might be lacking, and maybe the direction in which we want to go. So traditional guided reading has been something that we've been trained in and we've been steeped in Long Island and New York for a very long time. We do understand that. And the science of reading does also recommend small group reading. However, the shift there would be the move to skills-based groups, decoding instruction occurring explicitly and systematically right before the small groups, and then students moving right into decodables. So we need to look at that. We need to see what that would look like. Another thing we would want to look at is our traditional writing units. Traditional writing units are important. They help foster creativity. It's an area that students need to continue, just like we were talking about today with the arts. It's an area that we want to continue to bolster in them, that creativity, as well as going through the writing process, knowing that there's a process to doing things, that you just don't write and then you're done, right? That there's a continual reflection and continual improvement, just like what we're doing here as adults. So those traditional writing units are important, but there's also a need for writing about reading and writing from a place of what you know and where you have a strength. So how can we embed both, and how can we ensure that we are having those reciprocal practices occurring? when we when we learn to read, we learn to write. When we learn to write, we learn to read. So it's all very important. We also want to look at our varied approaches for grades 3 and up. We have a very strong phonics and phonemic awareness program, K2, but now what are we doing for grades 3 and higher? How are we ensuring that we're having systematic grammar, syntax, and vocabulary instruction? And what would that look like? And what would we turn to do that? KTL has something for that, right? But is that appropriate? We don't know yet. We have to continue our research in this area. And then finally, we also want to think about the implications for our MTSS, as well as our ELA goals that we have as a board and as a district. So right now we have an RTI model. We're moving into an MTSS model. We're moving from a reaction to more of a preventative, and that means really bolstering Tier 1 core instruction. So any research we're doing, any questions that we're asking, and any decisions then that we do make, we need to ensure that it's really good for Tier 1 core instruction so that we can limit how many students are requiring Tier 2, Tier 3 supports, and all of those things can be happening inside the classroom. Now, as far as the ELA goes, we keep hearing over and over again from the research this idea of background knowledge and comprehension and vocabulary development. Well, how do we build those things? We build those things through rich texts and through opportunities in the content areas, such as social studies and science. There's only so much time in a day, so how can we do that most effectively? So we might want to consider something like integrated units. These integrated units could be are characterized actually by rich, engaging content that are aligned to a concept and an essential question, allowing us to really dive deeply into something while learning how to read and write. In these types of units, learners build subject area knowledge in history, science, literature, the arts, and learn how to read and write at the same time. And when we put knowledge in the center of learning, amazing things happen. Kids become really motivated to learn and to do more and to produce and to demonstrate. And with that then comes this motivation to want to read more and want to learn how to read more. So it's something we might want to consider in our K-5 buildings, seeming that in our middle school and our high school, we really do subscribe to the MYP program and we subscribe to the IB, baccalaureate program.
Research tells us that decodable texts are important for our earliest learners. I worked with our neighboring districts who have already embraced decodable text within their literacy instruction. Presently, I've reached out to companies and they are in the process of sending us samples via email and hard copies. I'm going to share these with the reading team and the ELA curriculum committee for their input. Financially, it is a commitment, and we want to be certain that these decodables not only follow a scope and sequence of phonetic principles, but also have a rich content to support vocabulary and comprehension as well.
So as you can see, it's not so easy just to say we're going to just shift. There's a lot of research and a lot of time and a lot of questioning that goes in, and those are good things. So as we come to an end of our presentation, there are several considerations and recommendations we would like to offer for us to consider as a district. As we know, there are several factors that can limit a child's literacy growth. We referred to those before as risk factors. And we also know that there are resilience factors that can counter these risk factors. Tonight, we spoke about the instructional approaches that will build our learners up as readers, writers, and communicators. We need to also consider how instilling a growth mindset is paramount in cultivating learners who thrive in and beyond school as well. And how interesting would it be for growth mindset to be a part of our culture here at Rockville Center, something that we live, we don't just do. An additional consideration is something called implementation science. It is used in medicine when you're beginning a new treatment. When you're beginning a new treatment, you stop the use or de-implement the use of a previous treatment. Dr. Reeves from Stanford dives into what evidence-based implementation looks like, including the importance of de-implementation. It is a fantastic listen, and several of his quotes resonated with us. And I'm going to refer to the last two that I have starred up here. The problem is this: if you only look at the results, then you don't know what caused it. Somebody has to look at the underlying causes. So that research, the questioning, is very important because we want to make sure that we are identifying the correct symptoms and that then we are identifying the correct treatment for those symptoms. Secondly, you have to distinguish between an initiative, something that is new, and a culture, something that's part of what we do every day and that is embedded. That is more important, building culture. So just like Dr. Reeves, we've used this graphic before, and I'm going to bring us back to this graphic. Just like Dr. Reeves suggests in his research, we also want to ensure that our systems integrate seamlessly. We want things to be connected with purpose and not seen as separate and apart. This gives our district depth and texture. This is what it means to create a culture, a way of life and a being for us to all live by. Essentially, we are continuing to create this academic ecosystem and this culture that has the potential to motivate, maximize every child's learning across their K-12 educational journey by honoring the past and also moving with the research. So to ensure this, we want to cultivate a process where we engage in research, discussions, experimentation, analysis, and then action. This inquiry model is the key to lasting impact and continuous improvement, as well as collaborative decision-making. And Tracy will highlight the importance of this model and the impact it has had on her as a longtime educator in the district.
Personally, I have been given an opportunity to work with the finest educators in Long Island right here in Rockville Center. I've been able to share my best practices from one school to another. I have visited classrooms and met your beautiful children. For years, I have researched and continue to research the best practices in reading. It was always my dream to be able to share my knowledge and expertise with all the teachers in the district. Mr. Gavin, and to the board, as a literacy coach, I cannot thank you enough for giving me this enriching opportunity that increases teacher collaboration and unifies our district. Thank you, Dr. Moriarty, and as you always say, it's the word we in RBC. Together, we can do so much.
So I would really like to end with Tracy's words because they are powerful and they give me the people bumps, as my children would say. But I do want to summarize the science of reading and what we went over today. The brain has plasticity. There are resilience factors of growth mindset as an indicator of reading success despite risk factors that are there for all of us. RBC does have alignment to the science of reading. There is more inquiry, and there is more learning, and there is more research to be done. The science of reading is science, and there is science to back that up. It is a framework, and it consists of 5 pillars. There's equal importance among those pillars or strands or components. It is not one program, but a series of evidence-based practices that requires explicit, systematic, and a gradual release of responsibility for our instructional design. And implementation is equally dynamic. We want to consider a culture of learning and a culture of literacy practices that are sustainable. Remember, instruction and teacher efficacy are key. And it is so important for us to remember that none of this work would really be possible without Mrs. Broderick and the wonderful teachers here, as well as their principals, because they are all working very, very hard to ensure that every child here meets with the most success. We've also included some more feedback from teachers from the various things that we've done, as well as the resources that we are utilizing to help support our research. We are done.
Thank you. First and foremost, I do have a couple of comments. The thing I kept taking away throughout all this, thank you. And I know that the two of you are standing here, but there was a much broader team involved. In what I've come to see is that we are an organization that is centered around learning, and what I see here is an organization that's becoming a learning organization. That we are working together as the adults to get better at what we do. And the process that we've gone through has been very methodical to get to this presentation. First, it involved listening to the community. Before I even started here, I came to a board meeting and we had a parent come up and talk about, are we implementing the science of reading? And that was one of the things that we were very intentional about as a board and a superintendent, for us to talk about in terms of how are we going to systemize this through our goals. And part of the genesis of the goals was to put systems in place. This is one of those systems. How do we learn to get better? How do we have our educators understand the science of how we learn? And I can tell you, I did sit for a long time at that one workshop that we had over at Malloy. But the reason I sat for so long is because it was so intrinsically interesting. And we had members of 3 separate districts in that workshop, and everyone was engaged professionally about what are the implications of the science of learning and how I teach. And to me, both of you have done an unbelievable job trying to summarize very complicated neuroscience and put it into practical application in the classroom. The other thing that I thought was really important, I was so glad that you brought it in, was the idea of implementation science. Was not only do we go learn something, we have to think intentionally about how we do it and bring it to bear. And what I've seen, and this is the best part about having Tracy in the role that she's in, that's intentional as well. She helps leverage all of our other resources and buildings, and we work on it together. Thinking in the same way, using a common language, you mentioned common language multiple times, that we are identifying terms that are consistent, that we are applying practices that are consistent, no matter what building you're in. Good teaching is good teaching. And that's why the focus on the ATLs, the approaches to learning, was really important. ATLs are a component of the IB program. That shows that we're not only doing things that are based on the science of reading at the elementary level, but that progresses all the way up through high school. So, do we have places to get better? Absolutely. Do we have places we can get more consistent? Absolutely. But when I was at that conference with everyone, I was so impressed with the level of dedication and the passion for learning from our reading math teachers. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that all of our elementary principals were there, engaged in the conversation as well. And they are the thought leaders in their buildings, and it was wonderful to have us all together thinking the same way and, crafting a plan, co-constructing, co-creating, as Dr. Moriarty loves to say, co-creating a vision for what literacy instruction is going to be here in Rockville Center. And that is not to say we're not doing great things already. It's about systemizing them and improving them and getting better. Well done, well done, well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board?
I'll start. Thank you. I feel like I learned, even just listening to you and understanding the complexity that goes on in our brains that we are not even aware of, right? As adults, this is all unconscious, but seeing it play out in developing literacy in children is really fascinating, and so much depends on reading, right? If you can't get information from a text, you will not be able to learn chemistry or physics, right? You need that foundational skill. So, in line with what Mr. Gavin was mentioning about consistency, would you say that the action steps that you've been taking already in this school year are progressing towards a consistency across the 5 different elementary schools? Because we do have, varying staff, and I know the coaching comes in, but how can we address that sort of, unique facet of Rockville Center schools that we have 5 different elementaries where literacy is taking place across the board?
For myself, being able to be in all 5 elementary schools, every elementary school is doing great things. It's just the consistency of that common language and the consistency of everyone doing Heggerty in the younger grades, foundations in the younger grades, and the start of the keys to literacy. I walk in rooms now and they're taking a math problem and they're using the keys to literacy, top-down method. I walked into an EL room today in Covert, and she actually was doing top-down with her kids. She's like, they love it. So just across curricula and across schools, they're all doing it. But we've been doing it. It's just that common language that is so important.
Thank you. And the other thing that struck me was your slide about sort of optimal brain plasticity, right? I think you had ages 3 to 8 on there. So yes, it's great that we've gotten UPK and gotten our kids into this as young as possible, but for the parents at home, how can they maximize that age 3, or even pre-verbal, right? Pre-reading, how can they create an environment that's as rich as possible?
Great question. I think we're going to both kind of bounce off and jump in here off of that. So please, first is to breathe and to know that it's optimal brain age for this is age 3 through 8. So what are we talking to by the end of 2nd grade,
Yeah,
beginning
so
of
you're
3rd
talking
grade
about-
for some students? Remember, not everybody develops at the same rate and the same time and the same. So it's okay, and we're working on it. So that's one. Then the second is narrate your day. Read to your children. Do books on tape. When you're driving from here to basketball to soccer to wherever, put a book on. Sing songs. The oracy. The
Nursery rhymes.
the nursery rhymes, right, exactly. 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day. It doesn't have to be this 20-minute, 30-minute. It's just that constant oral listening comprehension to continue to move them up that staircase of complexity. And that's chapter 1 of Shifting the Balance, is that listening comprehension piece.
And research also says that a child shouldn't pick up a book to read until they've been read 500 books, based on research.
Read aloud, yeah.
Yes.
Read aloud, right.
Read aloud. That's key.
Yep, and ask questions too, right? So if we're watching a show, start asking questions. Who's the protagonist? Who's the antagonist?
Look at you.
I know.
How are the shades of meaning
Yes,
words?
shades of meaning are my favorite. But yes, play with words, play with vocabulary, have fun, play with, what's the setting? Ask those questions that are the questions that need to be asked, or what even happened in this story, and just check for comprehension. Just don't let them sit passively and watch a show. Use that show as an opportunity for you to grow some skills and to build those neural backflip moments.
Thank you.
I appreciate the consistency. Wrote that down I wrote down consistency and streamlining, because I think parents start talking and what reading program are we using, and they want to have a name to it, and I appreciate the answer, because it's that there's a piece of something in everybody in every lesson, and the language that you all are speaking does make a lot of sense, and the training that you're doing, it goes a long way. Mrs. Broderick, you probably taught thousands of children in this district how to read. You really are
Actually,
a
I have to
gem.
say today, when they put the visual artists on the thing, I was like, I taught them.
I'm not surprised. I mean, we were very lucky to have you at Hewitt. I'm thrilled to know that you're expanding your knowledge and sharing it with the other teachers and your cohorts and the other schools. You are a gem for the district. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
One thing that always stuck out for work that we did together way back was you always talked about summer slide, right? So much of the science of reading, I would imagine, has its own consistency factor, right? It's that kind of rinse, repeat, learning process. So we have these months where, let's be honest, maybe we're all not as good as Dr. Moriarty of, doing our lessons offline, but I would love to see us have that also consistency of an approach for parents toward the summer session, giving good advice about how to keep those things up. We did have learning loss from COVID, but we definitely can't afford to have learning loss every year from summer. That's an every year thing versus a pandemic, which is hopefully a once in a lifetime, never again thing. So I would just love to see us kind of really bite into this and that continuation of everything throughout the year, so that we could help our parents and students return in September, even better than they left.
When we worked together back when with the summer slide, where actually Dr. Moriarty and I have been speaking about making the reading on the lawn in every school starting this summer.
Great.
So we've
I love
already
to hear
spoken.
that. That's
I
a
feel
really
like you're
special
inside
thing.
my brain.
Yeah.
Like right now, because I was just going to say that.
Oh, sorry.
It's great.
No, it's fantastic.
It was a great way to get students back together and remembering school was still part of their fabric, that they weren't really taking a break from their learning, right? That they may be taking a break from that building, but that we just want to keep that fabric of learning constant, and it was just something that was really successful, and I'd love to see us making sure it's universal.
That was my first experience here at Rockville Center.
Her second day on the job.
That's right.
She met me.
She said, I'm doing reading on the lawn.
And I was like, she's like, where? And I was like, 6:30 at Hewitt. She,
Okay, I'm here. I had a beach chair in my trunk.
Mrs. Pike didn't even meet her yet.
That's right. And we read the book with no pictures. Yeah, the book with no pictures.
And the kids actually love, I think, the social atmosphere, not even the book, it's just that camaraderie that builds like the community, and also the new families that come and show up on the lawn. She was the new person that
I was a new person.
And that reading can be fun, right? Reading, it doesn't have to be difficult, it can be just a
It's supposed
source
to
of
be
joy.
fun,
and
joy.
Family activity.
Yeah.
Activity, going to the zoo. Yeah.
Thank you. This was great, and it really makes, I think, everybody who's paying attention and listening at home and who will watch it in the future show that we're being led by real experts in their field. So I appreciate both of you. Thank you so much, and and Dr. Hood as well, just for being pioneers. And your knowledge is just so broad-based and welcomed. So thank you for everything.
I'm going to echo most of everything that everyone said, but thank you. And I can remember, and I won't say when because then it'll date us about how old we are, but I remember being in a Hewitt kindergarten classroom and having Mrs. Broderick push in when I was in the PTA there and do these kinds of presentations then. So the fact that you've been doing this sort of thing, your passion for what you do and translating it into teaching other people how to do it and your absolute joy for it, we appreciated that at Hewitt then, and I appreciate it sitting here now. And the reading on the lawn all came from you and the people that you work with, and it was amazing. And I think having a celebrity show up, you'd get a particular person in district who would show up, and it'd be like, oh, that teacher that normally wouldn't be the person to read. The little ones would be like, that's the older kids' teacher, and she's reading to us. Yeah. So it was really nice, and I'm glad to hear you're going to expand that. The second thing, and I think everyone kind of echoed it, is something we've been hearing from the community for a very long time, which is about alignment and consistency and that shared, language that you've taught. And that's amazing because while we do have individual schools with their own flavor and their own being, it is really important that as readers, we share a language and we share a program, even if it is pieces of different programs, and that's what works best for us. It's great that all the children entering into the middle school from these grammar schools are going to have at least a similar and shared experience and vocabulary. So for that, I thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really excellent. I love so much of what you were both presenting tonight. Specifically, some of the highlights for me is the idea of common language, not just aligning the elementary schools, but thinking about what does the K through 12 alignment look like? What are the words that we're using? And then especially as we look at writing and how we teach writing and having that common language. Myself being a middle school teacher, I am often very much wishing that my district had a common language, because it's very difficult to take students who have 15 different words for what I'm calling a topic sentence, trying to teach that, and then the teachers that come next have a different language. So really trying to streamline that and having that be a priority, I think will do wonders for kids. So that was really a big highlight for me. I'm also really thrilled about coaching. I've been thinking a lot myself about coaching, and the idea of ensuring that you have a 100% capable staff. Not that our teachers are not capable, but again, to myself, I'm a social studies teacher. I was not trained in literacy. I was not trained to teach children to write, but that is what my job is. And having access to a coach, someone who is knowledgeable, someone who can come to my classroom, low stakes, help me, I think that is so amazing, and I really hope that we can take this idea of coaching and expand it even more than it is, that teachers have continuous access to someone who can be in their classrooms with them. So that's phenomenal. I guess really the only other major question I have is more of a wonder. So in listening to this, I'm kind of hearing that we're moving more from a balanced literacy to structured literacy.
Right. So
Ish.
Right? So, but that's where the continuous research and questioning really needs to, so when we first started on this journey as a educational organization, not here just Rockville Center, like everywhere, the first thing we were hearing about the science of reading is that it's phonics, 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 right? So now people are finally diving really back into that research and going back into the reading panel, and then the other reports that have come about around the same time as the reading panel and other reports that came out afterwards, and really going back into it and saying, wait a minute, there's more to reading, right? So when you look at that, they're finally just coming out with new papers, and educators like Dr. Strom are looking at, they're the ones that bridge that science and our practice. So they're finally getting their teeth into it, saying, hey, let's really look at this and see what does this mean and what are the implications for these other areas. So when we think about balanced literacy, we need to really look at that and all the components of a balanced literacy and all the components of what goes into science of reading, and saying, okay, this is what matches and this is what doesn't. And then make decisions from there. And it's Tracy, it's Miss Love, Dr. Hood is no longer with us. It's me, and it's also all of the reading teachers that also bring in years of experience and years of knowledge around different things, where we sit and we talk and we read and we talk and we read, and then we start to make sense of all of these things. We're just here tonight as the people who are presenting this. It takes a whole, and the principals too. It takes all of us. We text about it, we email about it, like it doesn't stop. So that's why I say ish, right? Because we really need to have a lot more information before we can make really definitive answers as to what that means instructionally. One of the things that just keeps coming out, though, is the need to build that background knowledge and that vocabulary. And as a history teacher myself, that is something that really lacked when the students came up to high school for me, right? And then also their ability to be able to write. So how do we ensure that we're doing all of it and still reading aloud and still giving them time to read and love what they're reading and give choice, but not too much? So it's a lot, right? So I say ish for right now because we need some more time to dive into the papers.
The only other question I have is, and I don't know that you're going to have an answer for this for the same reasons, are we moving away from Fontes, Pinel, and TC Lite, or whatever we called it?
Right, so I did, after, through our investigations, it is written in some of our curriculum units, some of the TC models, right? So I do see what you're saying. We need to really look at the day, and we need to align everything to the science of reading. What that means is still really, truly up in the air for when we're talking about the comprehension and the background knowledge and how we teach learners how to write. Because we also don't want to give up creative writing. Because that's an area too. When they get to high school, they don't know how to, they know this formulaic way of writing, but then they don't have creative writing. You know what I mean? So those are issues that we really need to dive into. So how do we still honor creative writing, but how do we honor the science of reading as well?
Thank you. And then just my last comment, which is, this is just kind of like my wish in life. When you, I have a lot of wishes in life, I guess I shouldn't just say one. But when you were talking on the slide with the tree and the environment, and we know what we can do as educators to build a child's capacity to read, but some of the things that we can't control is the environment, especially the environment that students are in before they come to us. Obviously, adding in pre-K is excellent. It's probably increased the number of students who now have access to that service, but because we don't have all students attending the same pre-K, it's hard to understand where they're coming from, where you may have parents who elect to go to a more academic pre-K, or parents who elect to have their children go to a more play-based pre-K, or kids who don't go at all. And then they come to kindergarten, and we have these great programs in kindergarten. We have Hegarty, we have foundations, we're doing all of the things we need to be doing. But you might have students who are just not ready to learn that yet because they're still working on self-management skills. They may not have had access to language, to reading. And there's almost, again, to me, it just feels like the race to read, the race to make these children do things that 5-year-olds aren't necessarily meant to be doing. Like when I was 5, I was taking a nap in kindergarten. I was not learning these things. So I wonder sometimes too about like that push for it. Do we need to push this hard? Is there a way that we can take a step back and say, we want to rethink K through 3? I know we're a public school, so we have more, a bit more rope tied to what we do.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily an either or.
I also think,
I think it's, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry, Mr. I see what you're saying. I don't know if it's an either or. You can have a play-based approach and build literacy.
No, I'm not saying that you can't do that. I'm just saying like,
and to take your point, I think we kind of are rethinking not only K through 3, but pre-K 12. You know, one of the great things about coming, you know, with fresh eyes, Dr. Moriarty and I both come from a different place, is that we are now asking a lot of questions. And those questions sometimes cause people that have worked here for a long time to rethink. You know, not in a judgment way that we're doing the wrong thing, but should we do something new, or should we go in a new direction? Or should we improve the strengths that we already have? So I think if we're going to really be not only an organization for learning, but a learning organization, we constantly have to be rethinking what we're doing. And I think it's really important to note that this process included us going out and asking experts as well. It wasn't just 5 of us in a room somewhere saying, let's do something different, right? It was, let's go see what the research is. Let's go see what other people do in different places and putting it all together under the construct of a system. And that is what I really want to applaud all of our district for this year in all of the different goals, because we are building new systems to allow us to continually reinvent ourselves.
yeah. And I totally appreciate that, because I do think a lot of times school districts jump into a program because here's a new program and you can buy this. So I appreciate the time that we're taking to really investigate what is available and what is best for kids. So, thank you.
And I hear what you're saying. I don't know how to,
I think we're good.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you again for your thoughtful and comprehensive presentation. Both your expertise and your passion truly shine through, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Turning to items for discussion, for policies at stage 1, 3415, the policy on sexual harassment. We are required by law to do some updates, so I'm going to ask Ms. Harvey if you don't mind just giving a brief overview as to what we have to update in policy 3415.
The update dealing with the revision to the law is on page 9. It is adding language about a toll-free number, places that people could call for help and assistance. Some of the other revisions were really more kind of non-substantive New York State instead of, spitting out. So, but the main revision that had to be done is on page 9, dealing with numbers to call.
Understood. Thank you. Any comments or questions on policy 3415? Move this to stage 2.
Yes.
Policy 5681, school safety plans. This is just an update to language.
I just had a question. I know Mr. Murphy mentioned the RAVE program earlier, and then this on page 1 is talking about the installation of a panic alarm system as part of the policy. So I just want to understand what happens, we adopt this policy, we don't do we not have that yet? And then do we have to have it because it's
There's
something?
2 or 3 different modalities of it.
Okay.
The RAVE app is one of them.
Is one of, it would
The
count
RAVE
towards
app
this.
is one of them, yeah.
Okay, I was wondering
Yeah.
that, because it's
Yeah.
like we adopt
There are
this,
others where it's just
then we're out of
hardwired on
compliance.
the
Okay.
wall
Yep.
that some people have.
Okay.
That's a little bit different, but there's a different modality for each of
Okay,
those.
so that counts
Yep.
towards this, what we have already. Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask a follow-up question about the RAVE app? I know it's not related to the policy. I know that when we had talked about security a few months ago, mentioning the RAVE app, have we extended the opportunity for teachers to have the RAVE app on their phone? Or is it still limited to only select people
We
in the
have
building?
strategic people, depending on their location in the building, so that we make sure, some of that are administrators, some of that would be teachers, so that we make sure that if there's an incident in a large building, say like the high school, we have somebody there who would notice it quicker than, say, just the principal in the office.
Okay, so we do have it then spread out throughout the building?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
strategically.
Anything else on 5681?
No.
Okay, to move this to stage 2?
Yes.
7530 and 7531, we're actually going to be merging. We're going to be rescinding 7531. So 7530, child abuse in an educational setting, child abuse and maltreatment.
So those two policies are bringing the policies up to date with the current law, and the main revision is to put them together, which makes sense. So if someone's looking for child abuse and they don't realize there's a difference between the two situations, you don't want by accident someone looking at the wrong policy. So that's really form over substance, but I think it's less likely of having someone having an issue and using potentially a wrong policy.
Makes sense, thank you. Any comments or questions?
And this is an area that is heavily guided by the statute. The district doesn't have much leeway or ability to change much.
And it brings it into compliance with both education law, family law, labor law, all different sorts of statutes.
Okay, so move 7530 to stage 2, and we can rescind 7531
Yep, and we're gonna keep it at the same stage
forward.
because of the fact that I don't want to, because otherwise what that would do is would get rid of part of the policy.
Yep.
And we don't want to get rid of the old policy until the new one is amended.
Great, thanks. Move both to stage 2?
Yes.
Stage 2, policy 2150, travel reimbursement. We had gone over this at the last meeting, just a slight change. Anybody have any comments or questions? Okay, to move this to stage 3?
Yes.
Currently at stage 3, we have 5540, publication of the district's annual financial statement.
No revisions needed?
Yeah, okay, to move this to approval at the next meeting?
Yes. Yep.
5550, use of federal funds for political expenditures. Okay, to move this?
Yes.
5610, insurance. Okay, to move this as well?
Yes.
Yep. Yes.
5620, inventories. Okay, to move this as well?
Yes.
Yep. Yes.
And 5630, facilities, inspection, operation, and maintenance. Okay, to move this as well?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Gavin, opportunity for superintendent.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I want to share my congratulations to Mr. English and our DECA club members from Southside High School. The DECA students will be sending 60-plus learners to the New York State level competition. We are super proud of that. For those of you who are unfamiliar with DECA, it is a club and activity that provides students with practical experiences and coursework in the areas of finance, marketing, business management, entrepreneurship, and financial literacy. And basically what happens is the students practice for a range of different scenarios, and then on those days, they're given a scenario with which they are going to have to respond. And I will tell you this, Southside High School students really, really did well. I felt like that scene in Jaws where I'm like saying, we're going to need a bigger boat. It's not usual where you have 60 kids go to state. So this is something that is going to be an opportunity for further discussion with the board as we get into budget season, where we're going to be talking about different ways to support our students that are interested in learning more about areas of business. I also wanted to, thank Dr. Zuar and all of our music teachers for their wonderful concert season. I had the opportunity to attend all of our concerts and to see progression from our Riverside kindergarten students all the way to our IB music students performing at a super high level was wonderful for me to see. You kind of see how the story starts and how the story ends. And all the way through, it was a really wonderful experience. January is Board of Education Recognition Month. I don't know if you guys knew that, but it is. So thank you very much for your service to our children. Thank you very much for the service to the community, and of course your support for what we do every day. So thank you very much. And then last but not least, this is a bittersweet one. I know Dr. Moriarty already kind of let the cat out of the bag. Okay. Our esteemed colleague, Dr. Sonia Hood, has earned and needs to be congratulated on being named the Assistant Superintendent for the Elwood School District for our curriculum and instruction. Now, normally we would have five or so more months in which to benefit from Sonia's presence, her expertise, her professionalism, and for me, her friendship and her humor. But this job starts in 3 weeks. So for me as a person and a colleague, in 6 months, you came to mean a great deal to me with your expertise, your friendship, what you know, and your passion for kids. So I want to congratulate you, and as much as I am sad to see you go as a person and a colleague, I am thrilled for you because you deserve it, and because Elwood is getting an outstanding educator that is centered on the needs of kids. Congratulations, Dr. Hood. That is my report for the evening. Ed Foundation? Okay, all right. That's my report, Madam President.
Thank you. Opportunity for board members. Mrs. Messier?
I hope that everyone had a wonderful holiday, and I wish everyone a happy and healthy new year. I'd like to thank our custodial staff and grounds crew for all of their work over the break. We certainly had a little bit of it to do.
A little bit.
I'd like to thank Mrs. Love and the Mental Health Consortium for all of their work surrounding mental health. My family has enjoyed the wellness videos that have been posted on Instagram, and we look forward to attending the Wellness Walk in May. To thank Dr. Zuar for his presentation on our arts offerings. Our children are very lucky to have such a talented team of teachers and such robust offerings to choose from. Thank you, Dr. Moriarty and Mrs. Broderick, for their science of reading and literacy presentation. Thank you also to Dr. Hood, Mrs. Love, and the rest of our reading staff and classroom teachers. This is a long overdue change, and I thank you for spearheading and moving this work as quickly and effectively as you have. I look forward to hearing about the future recommendations for our reading program. And finally, congratulations to Dr. Hood on her new role as the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum in the Elwood School District. I feel very fortunate to have had the opportunity to work with you, and I wish you nothing but the best as you move into your new role. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Farzani?
I want to echo Ms. Messier's sentiments with regard to Dr. Hood. I've only gotten to work with you for a short period of time, but you've been amazing, and their gain is our loss, and good luck to you. I want to thank everyone who did a presentation this evening, and we do have a wonderful music and arts program and a fantastic literacy crew. It being that I didn't know it was a board appreciation or board recognition, but when I came home one day during the break, there was this beautiful little wooden snowman on my front porch, and it was painted and had a little hat on, and there was a very, very sweet note written by the Rockwell Center Woodshop class at the high school, and they partnered with the kindergartners to make it, and it really made my day. So I want to thank everyone who participated in that, Dr. Walsh and Mr. Benlick, for doing that for us. It really touched me, and it was so pretty, and I can't wait to put it up every year with all my decorations. Happy New Year to everyone, and that's about it.
Thank you. Mrs. Hackett?
Happy New Year. Thank you to Dr. Moriarty, Dr. Hood, Mrs. Broderick, Dr. Zuar, and all of our staff in the music and arts department and in our reading. They're such big foundations of everything we do here. I agree with Mrs. Farazani. I loved getting the snowman. I loved the partnership between our youngest and our kind of oldest students, and I hope we can continue to do that and see that partnership happen more K-12. I loved it too. I just wanted to give a little anecdote about Dr. Hood, who came to us as Mrs. Hood, I'd like to note. So we were able to be here. And I can't see her because she's behind that podium.
You want to come sit front and center?
There she is. There she is. So she came to us as Mrs. Hood with the prospect of getting her doctorate degree underway and almost completed. And we knew from the get-go of meeting her and interviewing her that she was somebody who was going places. So to be able to be part of her journey at all is a thrill and a pleasure for me as a board member to watch somebody grow the way you have so quickly here. But just a quick anecdote about you. You started here at the end of a school year. And that was a tough time to start. We had breaks and things going on. Right after COVID, you made the transition, and I think it was January when we started doing board tours, and I think I was at 3 or 4 buildings, and every time I went to a board tour, which was just during the day, I bumped into Dr. Hood, Mrs. Hood at the time, and I said, does she know I was coming here? And it was funny. It was almost like we just seemed to bump into each other at these buildings, and from each principal, they said, Sonia's here all the time. And that's how she got to be so quickly immersed in what we were doing, because she took such an interest from the beginning. She put herself out there. She didn't ask somebody to take her. Nobody was holding her hand. She walked through these buildings. She got to know our staff. She got to know our kids, and they got to know her. So we're all better for you being here, and I really appreciate that initiative that you took, because it's not easy to be new somewhere. It's just not, mid-year especially. So all I can say is that Elwood is going to benefit from your expertise and your knowledge, and they will love you as much as we love you, because we love you. And I just want to say to the community, keep your eye out for this woman. She is going places. I wish we weren't losing you, but I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you. I think you're just a wonderful human being. You really are. Just a kind, inclusive, knowledgeable leader, and I just couldn't express my gratitude to you more. So thank you for everything. Good luck to you. Please keep in touch, and we're really all indebted to you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Downing?
Yeah, I join my colleagues in a warm congratulations and a sad farewell. I'm so happy for your success. It's really been a very big year for you, and congratulations on completing that doctorate while balancing a demanding job and all the other responsibilities that I'm sure we all have in our lives. But I'm sad for Rockville Center Schools. At the same time, I'm glad to know you're moving up and over to another great district who is going to benefit from your dedication. I've so enjoyed getting to know you. I have no doubt this is the next important step for you in a wonderfully productive and brilliant career. So thank you, and best of luck. Thanks also to Dr. Moriarty and Ms. Broderick for the instructive and really thoughtful presentation on literacy and the science of reading. Literacy is at the heart of what I do in my day job as a college English professor, and there's so much research being done on how students learn best, how important it is to develop this strong and good reading habits. So thank you for making that complex information understandable, and I have no doubt that the changes that you are considering and thinking about are going to result in bettering our student achievement as well. Thanks to Dr. Zuar for his inspiring presentation on the arts. I've always felt that our schools have a particular strength in the arts, from vocal performances to band to orchestra, as well as the dramatic plays and the musicals. One last plug to come see the student-directed plays this weekend here at the high school. And I do feel it's more important than ever for our students to have a chance to incorporate this creative expression into their education. And so for so many students, it's more than a hobby, it's a calling. And there are so many ways that the arts benefit their lives, as well as those of us who get to sit in the audience. Thank you, on that note, to all of our music faculty and our students performers for the wonderful winter concerts. I echo the thanks to Mr. Beinlich and to our kindergarten teachers and our high school wood design students. That was an adorable wooden snowman project that you took on, and I have quite a few products of wood design class already in my home from my own kids, and every single one of them, I have to say, is a source of pride. I think at every age, we should take a minute and be proud, right? Hey, look what I made. And when you can say, I made it for you, that's just even better. So I want to wish everyone a happy and a healthy new year. As we turn that calendar over to 2023, things will start to ramp up for our high school seniors. And I wish the class of 2023 the best of luck with their remaining college applications and as they look towards their future plans. As with so many students around the world, your high school experience was interrupted for sure, but you have shown such resilience and determination, and we're proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy New Year to all of our students, staff, and community members. Thank you again to Dr. Zuar and all of our music staff for the wonderful winter concerts. Dr. Zuar for your presentation tonight, Dr. Moriarty and Ms. Broderick for your presentation tonight once again. Dr. Hood, I'm very sad to see you go. In a fairly short amount of time, you've made a lasting impact on all of us here, on all of our students and staff, and I wish you all the best as you begin the next chapter of your professional journey. So best of luck in Elwood. They're lucky to have you. Thank you also to Mr. Beinlich and Dr. Walsh and our high school students and kindergarten students. I agree, coming home to that snowman was the highlight of the week leading up to the holidays. It really was something. I wish you guys could have seen my face when I walked up to the porch and found that staying there. So thank you so much. Really meant a lot to all of us. All right, opportunity for visitors. The public in its comments is requested to refrain from making any direct references to students or staff members that could be considered critical of their performance or their character. Such references to individual students or staff members are inappropriate in a public forum and should instead be conducted in private conversation with appropriate members of the staff. Please state your name and address when you come to the mic and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Remember that you are addressing the board as a whole and not any individual board member.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Jeff Greenfield, citizen taxpayer, Yuba Court. Thank you for fulfilling my FOIL requests. I don't know why I had to wait 32 days, but I want to tell you that I think you made a very good business decision, and it would have been a lot more expensive to litigate than to settle. And had you told me that originally when I questioned it, I probably wouldn't have filed the FOIL. Next item. At the last meeting, I asked about the fact that the HVA system here, and no one got back to me with respect to that, if it's can be transferred over to use in the gymnasium. And my pen wasn't working. Newsday wrote in Sunday about COVID pandemic aid. 3 or 4 months ago, I asked that if we review it at a meeting here and report to the tax-paying public with respect to that. Did I miss a meeting? That was done? You all agreed that it was a good idea to do that. And do I have to file a FOIL for that? Okay. Do I get some answers tonight? And I don't want it to count towards my 3 minutes like in World Cup soccer, I want extra time. Or whatever they call that in the World Cup. That was Yuma.
I got you. We did presentations last year about the status of what we were using the money for. We've done it several times as part of the mandate to take that money. And one of the pieces we are doing as part of budget season, and we will be talking about the status of that. So as we move through the budget season, which is February, March, April, we will be incorporating how we have spent COVID money as part of the presentation.
The Newsday intimated that most districts haven't spent and have spent no more than 20%. What percentage would you say that we have spent of our aid?
65, 70?
I'm glad to hear you're
With a
above
year to
the
go,
average.
yeah.
That's why you didn't make Newsday. You spent too much money of it. You would look too good doing that. The Judy Griffin in our last newsletter took credit for the walk out front. I didn't know about that she financed that and financed the
that was part
walk
of the
at the
grant.
middle school.
Yep.
That was separate from the federal pandemic aid, right? So maybe, the taxpaying public would be good to know that. We're doing a good job getting aid from one way or another, as long as it's not from taxpayers that are overburdened in a bad economy. I'm all in favor of that. Again, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Gavin, we have an acceptance of a gift on the agenda.
We do. We want to thank our longtime partner in education, the Ed Foundation, for their generous gift. One of the things that Dr. Moriarty has been working on with them is to work on how we make our gifts timely in the curriculum. And so instead of just waiting till the end of the year, we're establishing new gifting cycles. And we want to thank for the total amount. What the total amount was this time? Was $14,993.93. And we are going to use those grants for Dr. Moriarty. We have, let me put my glasses on, sorry. Let me put my glasses on. We have the 3D food printer at the middle school that'll be funded. We also have an artist journey with Reggie Laurent, which is an artist in residence for the middle school. And we are also funding the Library Media Center Makerspace at the middle school as well. All of these grants will be funded this year so that we can start to put them in place. I know that the food printer is going to be part of, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but a new class that we will be recommending as an elective at the middle school where students will have the opportunity to learn more about food science. So that is coming, and it is something that the middle school is passionate about, and it will be mixed in with it a range of different options that we're going to have for electives for next year.
Just want to add, being part of the Ed Foundation meetings this year as the board representative alongside Dr. Moriarty as the district liaison, it's been wonderful seeing the enthusiasm of that group. From very early on, they were just asking what did we need, and the comment was made, just the energy and the positivity starting the school year and perhaps moving to have a fall grant cycle as opposed to the traditional one in the spring. They were open to it, and they got it done in a very short amount of time. We're just very grateful for their partnership and this gift. So can I please have a motion to accept the gift?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Ed Foundation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion to approve the minutes as listed on the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve the financial reports as listed on the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor? Can I have a motion to approve receipt of financial reports as listed on the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to approve items for action A through E?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Can I have a motion to return to exec session for purposes of discussing an employment history of a particular person?
So moved.
Second? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.